MeTV celebrates Charles Shulz's 100th birthday.
Would you draw one of the characters for us now? It'd be interesting for art students and even non-art students to see where you begin.
Yeah, it's not very hard.
This fellow here, Snoopy, do you start with his head, his tail? Does it matter? Can you start anywhere you want?
Well, it's best to start up with the head. I'm going to show him at his typewriter. This is the world-famous novelist. He also writes letters and things like that. This is the author of the world-famous novel, It Was a Dark and Stormy Night.
You see that all right?
He's writing home in this case here.
That's very good.
MeTV celebrates Charles Shulz's 100th birthday.
Here's a challenge for you. Would you draw Charlie for a moment for us? And let me just see how much he resembles me as you draw him.
Charlie Brown?
Yeah. I'd like to. Can you make him look a little more like me so that I could see myself in the part if they recast it?
I never can do caricatures.
No.
I'm always
that's
afraid of insulting someone.
Show us how you do draw Charlie, though. Do you start with a circle, as everyone would assume, or not?
Yeah, which makes Charlie Brown the most difficult character of all to draw. And he's very difficult for the animators to draw, because to do that, that's kind of hard to do. That took me 27 years to learn how to do that. This is a baseball cap.
Do you suppose if we had films of you drawing him 20 different times, you would always use the same sequence of strokes?
Yes, I'm sure I would. It just, if you start different places, I think you end up with awkward lines. This is kind of reminiscent of a scene once where he was standing here by the curb like this, and somebody came up to him and asked him, what position do you play on the team? He says, I have the most important position. I stand here to see that the ball doesn't roll down the sewer.
Like it is doing something to you.
MeTV celebrates Charles Shulz's 100th birthday.
How, for example, did Snoopy evolve? Did you realize you needed a dog, and you decided not to be a poodle, an Afghan, what? Or had you always had this image of Snoopy from the beginning?
Snoopy was one of the few dogs that I could draw reasonably well. And
that's just how you draw a dog.
Right. Which is why I don't have a cat in the strip, because I draw terrible cats. But I did have a dog who was somewhat like Snoopy. When I was about 13 years old, he was a little bit larger than the dog that Snoopy is, but he was marked in a similar manner. He had the white body with a few spots and the black ears, and he was kind of wild. He had an understanding vocabulary of about 50 different words, and quite bright. And so Snoopy really was patterned somewhat after this dog whose name was Spike.
Spike is the inspiration for Snoopy.
Right.
What do you mean a working vocabulary, or what do you call it?
Well, he could. The dog couldn't talk, but he could understand a lot.
You mean like go get my gloves?
That's
or
right.
something?
Yeah, he could do anything. He had all. Yeah. He even used to ring the doorbell. It's the only dog I've ever known who could ring the doorbell. When he wanted to come in, he'd jump up and against the doorbell, and it would ring. We'd have to go down to the back door and answer it and let him in. It was kind of a nuisance.
Did he ever do that as a prank on the neighbors, you know, ringing and ringing?
On Halloween.
MeTV celebrates Charles Shulz's 100th birthday.
Why Charlie Brown and not Charlie Green or Charlie Smith or...
I used to work at a correspondence school in Minneapolis, and there were about 25 of us who were there as instructors, and one of the men who became a very close friend of mine, was named Charlie Brown. And I always thought it sounded like a drunk in a bar. And I'd say, well, here comes old Charlie Brown. Now we can have a good time, and everything's going to be all right now because Charlie Brown is here. So all of his friends, including myself, began to call him Charlie Brown. When I sold the comic strip, it did not have any definite characters in it, and the syndicate said you'll have to come up with some definite characters and names. So I asked my friend Charlie if I could use his name. And I can still remember the first day that I drew Charlie Brown. He came walking over, looked down at it, and said, oh, I'm so disappointed. I was hoping I was going to look like Steve Canyon.